Okay.
If you look at number 4 under the standards, and I believe you referenced a number of 250 acres.
Yes.
In the 250 to 499 acres, the maximum number of rooms, and think of an equivalent as a hotel room, okay? The maximum number of rooms would be 50.
Okay.
So your maximum number of bedrooms is 50. So I'm not sure that I see that higher density that you're...
Well, potentially you could have 50 individual units, correct?
Of one room each.
Right. Well, of one room, but there's no size limitation on the room right now.
That's correct. If you want to put an occupancy limit per room, that...
But I guess my point is if you had 750 acres and you had 100 rooms and they were all separate, we're putting this in rural preservation.
Mm-hmm.
There's no, this is the size of a small subdivision. I guess that's my concern at this point is we end up with 50 rooms, and I'm going to go back to Remuda Ranch that's sitting down in the rural part of the county, $8 million facility that's not rentable. Technically, they've had a very difficult time. It houses 75 individuals right now. And if they were coming and going on a daily or a weekly basis, it would be very difficult for us to manage. Now that it's closed and we don't know what it is, it can turn into just about anything anybody wants that buys it. They may not be able to rent it, but they could live there without any issue, correct?
Remuda?
If Remuda closed and somebody bought it.
It's ALA.
As a house. As a single-family dwelling.
As a dwelling, because there's no real, we can't really inspect it for the number of folks there.
Well, I think it depends on the building classification under which the certificate of occupancy has been issued for that structure.
They buy the property, they move it. Mr. Whiteman's here. They buy the property, they move in. What responsibility do we have to figure out how many folks are living there?
Isn't it zoned different?
It's zoned as a dormitory. So it's not zoned as a R5 single-family dwelling, so any occupancy would have to be related to a dormitory, whichever text amendment or
but
zoning we have.
If somebody bought the property, just flat out bought it, didn't ask us any questions.
Correct.
What's your ability to go inspect it?
My ability is if it's not going to be used as a dormitory, R2, let's say they wanted to have a single-family dwelling. Some guy with big dollars says, hey, I'm buying the whole compound, I'm going to make it a single-family dwelling. He would have to get a permit and then meet the building code for a single-family dwelling, or some sort of zoning that is a dormitory, then he's good where he's at now. So one or the other. If he has decided it's going to be a single-family dwelling, he needs a building permit, and it'll have to be inspected for an R5 occupancy.
So if he buys it, somebody buys it, asks us nothing. And the same thing with these. If somebody were to build 50, asked us nothing. There weren't any, until we got the first complaint, we would probably not do anything.
Yeah, until I got a complaint, I wouldn't go out there, nor does the law allow me. But
that's my point, nor does the law allow you. So we permit this.
Could I ask a question in
Sure.
reality?
Yes,
okay, totally hypothetical. I'm going to write the owners of Remuda Ranch a check tomorrow for $32.48, and I buy the place.
yes, sir.
Okay, I now have a dormitory.
Correct.
I don't have a house.
No, sir. R5 is single-family dwelling. You have an R2 dormitory by
Right.
building code.
So I can't move all my family in
No,
there
sir.
without coming to you. Now, if I did move all of my family in there as I think Mr. Seeley's insinuating, don't tell anybody, nobody knows other than all the cars going back and forth, and somebody will say, why are there so many cars coming from Mr. Thomas's new property?
Or if we had a fire and rescue call or the sheriff, and then they notified me, hey, Kev, there's a lot of people out here, that would constitute a complaint.
Right.
Then I would have probable cause to go out, count heads, who are you, who's related, who, time out, everybody out, and then we'd go through the permit process.
But if I buy the place and make it a dormitory and say, anybody I know could come and stay for a week, then they have to leave after a week, as long as I complied with that, you have no legal authority to do anything.
Right, as long as they comply with Fincham.
Conditions.
For his
Right.
zoning,
Right.
the dormitory's solid.
Right, okay. That kind of.
But I
straight
guess
away.
that's my concern, is we're deeming this in a rural preservation,
I'm done.
huge density, that with no conditions for any entrances, I mean, it doesn't have to be paved, we don't list anything in this.
I understand your concerns. My only suggestion would be that you not use the term density, because I don't think that's an appropriate analogy in this situation.
Okay.
You're simply talking a number of rooms. And you're right, think of this as a large hotel on 1,000 acres or more in a rural area with recreational amenities to go with it. Okay? You're not talking density in terms of units that can be rented out for permanent occupancy. So my only concern is your use of the term density, because I'm not sure that is.
Well, I'm going to go back to your definition of rented out for long-term use, because we won't know that. Somebody could go and stay there for 6 months, and again, we wouldn't have any way of knowing unless somebody complained. I mean, we've got motels that have turned into long-term extended stay places around the county. And if this doesn't make it, the next viable use would be, well, hey, I could rent this out for month to month, or for 6 months, or for a year at a time. One room, who's going to know? Unless somebody complains. And that may or may not happen. You still got traffic in and out. You've got it rented. And we don't really have any viable means of monitoring that
Right.
in a rural preservation area.
I understand your concern about the potential conversion of that facility, or it could be any other similar type of facility in that district.
I mean,
And that's always a potential, just like the Remuda Ranch example that you gave. If there's a conversion, yes, legally they have to come in and comply with zoning and building. There's always a potential that somebody's going to do something without a permit or without the appropriate approvals.
and the more removed it is, the easier it is to do. If this were in the Bowling Green Business District, the Port Royal Business District, somewhere off of Route 1 in Ladysmith where there's visibility and accountability per se, but, you know, off of Perimeter Road back on 700 acres, I think it becomes a real chore for everybody in the county.
I think I may have a little help. Ms. Cosby just said that it's possible to add a condition that says if ownership is transferred, the planning department must be informed within 14 days, 30 days, whatever the number is. And that would at least give you the heads up that that they took my $32 check and now I own the property. And then you would know, and you would be able to say, now I'm aware of a change, I need to pay attention to what's going on, and you'd be ahead of any complaint. You could make the complaint yourself.
I'm just saying that this becomes a nonstop staff problem in a rural preservation on 2, 3, 4, 5, 600 acres.
But if we add the ownership termination in there, you would at least be aware of any change, and you wouldn't have to go out there until ownership changed.
We've already got a property just like it. We can't do anything with. Those are my questions, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Akers?
I have no questions. My only comment is the fact that, that's the reason we're dealing with this ordinance change tonight, or creating this ordinance for rural resort. If it was going to be in a business district, we wouldn't be dealing with this particular ordinance tonight. It's a fact that most resorts you see are in a rural setting. It's not in the business district. It's not in the industrial districts. It's in the rural setting. If you look at the homestead, and I'm not trying to compare this to the homestead because I don't think it'd be anything close to that, but it's in a rural setting, very rustic setting. You look at other resorts and basically say, I'm sorry? Greenbrier. I mean, yeah. So that's the reason we're dealing with this ordinance tonight. I don't know why we're over concerned if we can put the condition in that, as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, about if the property changes. I think that's a good. It's not only a stopgap. To me, it's something that grabs people and says you're either going to continue to have it as a rural resort, or if you change it, you got to notify the county planning department within 14 days. That says something. It's more than just a stopgap.
And Mrs. Cosby, who I trust, says that that's something we can do. It's really just a condition anyhow.
Right.
All right, Mr. Underwood?
I just had one question for Lieutenant Colonel Meyer regarding the deterioration of the lighting used in terms of preparation for battle.
Yes, sir.
Can you elaborate a little bit?
I can, sir. As Mr. Akers said in our last hearing, a mile is a little arbitrary. If you told me you were going to build a Walmart in the middle of Bowling Green, I'll come help you dig. I mean, that's.
See, even he knows.
There are places on the installation where troops train regularly, and there are places on the installation that are either principally administrative in nature or are unused or principally wooded. In the areas where we have a camp or an airfield, one of the biggest things that we provide to really the entire Mid-Atlantic region is the opportunity to do both day and night training. As you've all heard in the last 24 hours, and got about 48 hours left, we're landing big planes on the assault landing strip right now. This is one of the only places on the eastern seaboard where you can do that kind of training on a short tactical field. We are simulating the conditions they'll see in far-flung places of the earth. So every time my friends in New Post try to build an enormous 400-house complex just a mile on the other side of Route 2, the light conditions that development would throw off would drastically affect the ability to make that approach using night vision goggles. And I don't mean to insult anybody's intelligence, but night vision goggles are light amplification. They take very small amounts, and so even ambient light from distant sources can wash those out. So as we talk about building, don't want to steal from the hearing on the 14th, perhaps mines or perhaps rural resorts in the vicinity of existing post facilities, camps, especially airfields, especially places where we do nighttime training, my principal concern is always about the ambient light conditions that throws off. And there's a flip side to that. I make a lot of noise. And so if I'm buying my brand new house in New Post, what I really don't want is to be on the approach of a C-17 at 150 feet. So I recognize that I probably wreck some conditions for some folks because of the noise I create. Similarly, their light can drastically affect our ability to use either airfields or some of our training area at night and to do the things that we need to do.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Now, Colonel, before you go, since you're here, the C-17s are the big transport planes that are coming in using the runway. I mean, we all know where the runway is.
Yes, sir.
So
it's on the northwest corner.
Okay, I wasn't trying to do any more information because we all know where it is. Now, you're doing night training closer to Port Royal, aren't you?
So we do night training all over the post, particularly, but it really comes down to where there is an existing camp. I mean, if you look at that will naturally be the conglomeration point. Certainly the Wilcox camp in the center of post is our biggest facility, right. But anywhere there is an existing facility, and you can see it easily on a map, I'd be happy to take you to any of them you'd like to go to. But that's really the thing. So if you have an area that is principally wooded, people might be in there, but the nature of the canopy protects it largely from ambient light spillage like that.
Gotcha.
It's where there's an existing facility, particularly one that's adjacent to an airfield.
Gotcha.
We have such a facility at the extreme north end of Post called Pender Camp that has an airfield that is right on 17 in the 17 corridor.
Yes.
So it is where maybe it's a little more exposed, particularly aviation operations, where that kind of thing can really not only drastically affect our training, but frankly become a hazard to the pilots.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because if you're flying in and you're simulating, short runway,
Yes, sir.
desert, dark, very dark, anything that pops up as ambient light is going to be a detriment to that pilot.
It can be, absolutely. Now, certainly that's part of the training, and they train for that kind of washout, but what we try and avoid is persistent conditions that keep that from happening.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Black?
Yeah, just a couple. First of all, I'd like to kind of make a statement that any time that AP Hill has some concerns, I think that we really need to listen to him. I just got a question, Mr. Fincham. I'm still stuck. We've been going over this for the year, the not limited to. Okay, so when I see at the bottom says prohibited recreations but not limited to. So what if I want to do something that's on this facility that's not in either, it's not a swimming pool or a related facility, non-motorized boating, whatever, fishing, but it's also not permitted? Then it's free for all then if it's not permitted? What is the situation then?
Mr. Black, here's my take on a process. You will get a special exception application for a rural resort, which requires a general development plan. As part of their application, we're going to ask them to spell out the uses of the facility, equestrian, whatever, okay? You're going to approve that special exception permit with conditions which clarifies the uses that they can have at that facility, which will then be the permitted uses. The concern was trying to think of every potential recreational use, okay? Shuffleboard. Do we need to list shuffleboard as a permitted use? I don't think so. So the use, it was not intended to be a free-for-all and allow everything under the sun, but it was tried to be crafted in such a manner as to provide some flexibility on a application-by-application basis relative to the particular request at hand versus trying to think of every potential recreational use that might be allowed. And that was the difficulty we had, was trying to identify how exhaustive a list would we have in terms of potential uses. I think you can regulate that on a case-by-case basis with the application itself.
I guess another question. On any special exception, this being, anyone who would apply for a special exception, it doesn't matter who or what, do we have because we've been talking about this before, is it legal for us, and maybe that's a question for the lawyer, to check off taxes paid or taxes owed to the county if they're up to date? Are we doing that?
Yes, we have started doing that, yes, sir. Based upon our discussions, we have incorporated that. We've incorporated that into our application packet.
And that does not need action from the board?
We're going to go ahead and amend the ordinance to do it, but I think state law already allows us to flag that, and we can bring that to your attention. And we've already included that in our application packets for a review to make sure staff looks at that.
So it's another checkbox, like the sheriff checks off, economic development checks off. I guess this would be the treasurer checks off.
We can go online and check with the treasurer in terms of whether what taxes, back taxes are owed relative to that parcel.
Mr. Black?
No, that's all for now, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions before I ask? This is the Port Royal District. Before I ask Mr. Taylor, any other questions? Mr. Taylor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have questions. I would just say that I support this or these text amendments. I feel as though a rural resort should be in a rural area. We certainly don't want to put them in the middle of the city or the town. So, and I think the major thing here is that we look at every request on its own merit, and we still have the opportunity to do that. I think for us to not do it would be detrimental because there is so much acreage in Caroline County that's zoned rural, and we would not want to exclude all of those areas. If one should come in an area that we have a question about, we still have the authority and the whereabouts to refuse or to not pass that particular request. So having said that, I would move, if a motion is in order, I would move the approval of text amendment 10, 2013 as presented with the additional condition that says if the property should change ownership, planning should be notified.
Within 14 days?
Within 14 days.
Second.
Motion is made by Mr. Taylor, seconded by Mr. Akers. We're going to do each one of these separately to approve 10-2013, which is the definition for rural resort, and repeal and replace the definition for general store. One question, Mr. Fincham. We, in response to the Colonel's original concern, lighting, there is no neon light to be permitted for the rural resort, and we've specified that in the application or one of the restrictions?
Yes, one of the standards would be shielded light downward foot candles, 0.5 foot candles.
Condition number 5, which is right after the max number of rooms.
I think we can also modify that condition more. We have talked about developing a dark skies ordinance in consultation with Fort AP Hill. So I think on a case-by-case basis, we can modify that standard even further to help address concerns that the fort may have concerning lighting and the impacts on the facility if an application should come out.
Just wanted to point out, I believe on Mr. Taylor's motion, the notification of transfer actually would go with the development standards down with, text amendment 12.
12.
I would
Okay.
confirm that with Mr. Fincham, but I think that's what it
So I'll ask, we're just doing the definition of this one. I'll ask you to withdraw your additional statement of the ownership changing hands.
I'll withdraw.
Okay, Mr. Akers?
Yes.
Okay, so the original stands as is?
Right.
No other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Nay.
Mr. Taylor, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Black?
Nay.
Mr. Underwood?
Aye.
Mr. Akers?
Aye.
Mr. Seeley?
Nay.
And I vote aye. The motion carries 4-2. Text Amendment 11, 2013, which
Chair-
is,
I'm sorry.
Mr. Taylor?
I would move the approval of text amendment 11, 2013 as presented.
Second.
Motion's made by Mr. Taylor, seconded by Mr. Akers. Discussion? Questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Division in the House. Mr. Taylor, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Black?
Nay.
Mr. Underwood?
Aye.
Mr. Akers?
Aye.
Mr. Seeley?
Nay.
And I vote aye as well. The motion carries 4-2. Text Amendment 12, 2013, developmental standards by adding paragraph P and Q to establish development standards for rural resort and general stores. Mr. Taylor?
I move approval of text amendment 12, 2013 as presented.
As
With
modified.
With the additional
Oh,
condition
I'm sorry.
that
With the additional condition of the
change of
changing
ownership, planning
of
department has
ownership.
to be notified within
Right.
14 days.
And planning would have to be notified in the 14-day period.
Thank you. That's Mr. Taylor's motion. Is there a second?
A second.
Second made by Mr. Underwood. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Chair to Tax Division, Mr. Taylor, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Black?
Nay.
Mr. Underwood?
Aye.
Mr. Akers?
Aye.
Mr. Seeley?
Nay.
And I vote aye as well. The motion carries 4-2. That takes care of our public hearings. Mr. Seeley? We will now take up agenda item number 5, which is special exception 04-2013, Aggregate Industries Land Company. Mr. Fincham.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the special SPX 04-2013 was previously heard by the board. You deferred action on this request. Since the public hearing, the meeting or the application has been deferred several times. The applicant is back tonight. As requested by the board, some additional information has been provided by the applicant relative to the application. You also have some letters of support in the packet that was provided to you, and I believe the representative for the applicant would, with the board's permission, would like to make a couple of additional comments relative to the information they provided for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Fincham. Mr. Payne, I take it that you're representing the applicant? Or?
Actually, Mr. Chairman, John Lane, I'll be representing the
Oh.
applicant and introducing the team.
I'm sorry, Mr. Lane. Okay. Now,
That's
we've
fine.
already done the public hearing.
Correct.
So I want to give you 3 minutes for you and the team.
I can do it in 2.
I'll give you 2 minutes for you and the team. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And first, I would just like to introduce the team in case you have questions, which is Mr. Tim Bavard with Allied or with Aggregate Industries, of course, Loopy with the engineering group, Mr. Payne, whom you know, and we also have 2 representatives, residents of the county and employees at the Mattaponi plant, Mr. Dan Sadler and Mr. Jim Cecil, who are here. And really what we just wanted to have a chance to quickly say was, you'd asked about economics. We have prepared and sharpened our pencils, done our economic homework. Just to point out one positive economic benefit is it'll be $54,000 or $52,000 of machine and tools tax for the excavators and haulers there. We've gotten letters from support from business owners. And then, of course, we have our employees here who, of course, are very interested in this. At the last meeting, you'd also asked about our neighbor, Mr. Ashley. To point out, we've reached agreement with him on 7 conditions that are in the staff report that are his conditions. We haven't reached agreement on everything, but we just want to let you know that we have tried as best we can and don't think we'll have an adverse impact on his property.
That's all you have?
That's it, sir.
Mr. Lane, are you responsible for this letter that says, from Brad Ashley, I'm sorry? Brad Ashley?
No, Mr. Ashley wrote his own letter. We have letters from haulers, business owners.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Ashley, again, he wrote his own letter.
Mr. Ashley's letter is to Calvin Taylor, Chairman of the Board of Supervisors.
That is I was not responsible for Mr. Ashley's letter. It would have looked a lot different had I written Mr. Ashley's letter, I can assure you of that.
No problem. We look nothing alike. But I just thought that was amusing. Or I'm trying to pretend it's amusing. All right. Thank you very much, sir. That's all you had to say?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Fincham, is there anything you would like to add before we dispose of this matter? Board members have any questions of Mr. Fincham at this time or of Mr. Lane? Mr. Ashley's not here. Sorry to hear that. Go ahead. Yeah. Mr. Seeley, I believe this is in the Bowling Green District.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, it is in the Bowling Green District, and I'd like to make a motion whereas SPX 04-2013 appears generally consistent with the requirements of the Caroline County zoning ordinance and the comprehensive plan, and whereas the public health, safety, and welfare and good zoning protects and supports the amendments of this request, I make the motion that SPX 2014 be approved, subject to the conditions in the board packet.
Second.
Motion has been made by Mr. Seeley and seconded by Mr. Akers for the approval of Special Exception 04-2013. At this time, do board members have any questions or discussions?
I did have one.
Mr. Black.
Can I talk to someone from the company?
Mr. Lane, or if you or
Yeah,
Mr.
yeah,
Bavard would like to come forward?
What was the, just out of curiosity, I think I've already seen it, but what was the one thing that you guys could not come in agreement with the neighbor?
Mr. Ashley wanted to put a cap on the time that we could mine on the property. And in his letter, I think he's talking about, he would like to cap us at 7.5 years. And that is a condition that we cannot live with, because the simple math of the site is we have 5.6 million tons to mine. We mine 400,000 tons average a year, and 7.5 years would only allow us to mine half of the site. That was the only issue that we could not agree upon, was a definite cap to the special exception.
Did you talk to him at all about, because I see you here, say here, 14 years, is that correct? Your time frame for mining this out is 14 years, correct?
That is the simple math of 5.6 divided by 400,000. That would allow us no leeway for a recession or anything that would decrease our sales. That would be based on what we did last year, certainly not what we did in 2010. 14 years is just a simple math. We would like more time, because we would like to actually exhaust that reserve when we go in and develop the reserve, not just take half of it.
Do you guys have a cap on the time? I mean, do you have a maximum? I see your 14 years is your estimate, but do you say, well, we'll be out of there by, in 20 years, 30 years?
I think a 20-year cap would probably be acceptable to us. Anything less than 15 years would not allow us to get the total reserve. We could live with a 20. We would, of course, prefer longer, but we do need enough time to exhaust all the reserves that we're developing.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, gentlemen. The board has before it a motion made by Mr. Seeley, seconded by Mr. Akers, to approve Special Exception 04-2013. If there are no more questions, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
As a follow-up to this agenda item, I believe when Mr. Ashley came before us, he stated that he was not paying county taxes. He was paying taxes to King William.
That's correct.
Have we identified that? If that's the case, can we correct that? Why not? His property's in Caroline. Is there some kind of magic way you don't have to pay taxes in Caroline when your house is in Caroline?
It depends on, I contacted Sharon Carter, and she contacted the Commissioner's office in King William, and you might have some more detail you can get to, but it's right on the line, and it goes with the way they divvied up property years ago on who pays taxes on what.
Our records indicate that the house actually is taxed in King William County,
He pays tax.
not in Caroline County as was stated.
The house is located in King William and not in Caroline. You said the house is taxed in King William.
My recollection was he was actually taxed in King William as well.
Right,
Yes.
but, so you're saying his house is located in King William and not in Caroline?
In looking at the maps we had, it looked like the house was in King William. There are boundaries between Caroline and other jurisdictions that are not clearly defined. And I think this is one of those situations where that line is not clearly defined, but between the two localities, it appears it's in King William and it is taxed in King William. So I think the statement that he paid the taxes to Caroline was in error. And I believe, if I recall, Mr. Culley, we also determined that he did not vote in Caroline either. So
what do we, he says?
He went out, we let him go on for half an hour.
All right. But he has a Ruth or Glenn address. Yeah, and Dawn that have a Doswell or a Hanover address. Okay. All right, that takes care of that agenda item totally then. We're going to assume that Mr. Ashley's in King William.
We are back to closed session, Mr. Chairman.
We can do closing board comments before we go into closed meeting, or we can do closed meeting and then come back to closing board
You gotta
comments.
come back anyways.
All right, we have concluded our agenda. We do have a closed meeting to discuss, or for discussion concerning a prospective business or industry or expansion of existing business or industry, where no previous announcement has been made of the business, industry, or interest in locating or expanding facilities in the community. That is what we need to go into under closed session for. We took care of all of the legal advice. Is that true?
Correct.
We took care of all the legal advice.
Correct.
But I'm sure you're going to give us more once we go in. Okay. We need a motion to that effect to go back into closed meeting.
We need the section.
2.2, 3711,
Oh, it's on the agenda. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we enter into closed meeting under section 2.2-3711A5.
Is there a second? Is there a second?
Oh, I second.
Motion made by Mr. Seeley, seconded by Mr. Taylor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. We will be in closed meeting, and as soon as we come out of closed meeting, we will conclude the board meeting.
Closed session.
So moved. Second. Tired.
I'm not the only one tired.
Second.
I was going to say, I thought I said that.
It's after 10. We've been here for 6.5 hours almost.
Yes.
We got here at 4:30? Yeah, whatever. 5.5. All right. Mr. Seeley makes the motion to come out of closed session. Mr. Black has seconded the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. That motion carries unanimously. Mr. Seeley, do you certify that only those things we entered into closed session were discussed?
I so certify, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Akers, do you certify?
Mr. Chairman, I certify that what we discussed in closed session, what do you know?
Mr. Underwood, do you certify?
Also certified.
Mr. Black, do you so certify?
I so certify.
Mr. Taylor?
You have to say it louder.
He can probably hear.
Yeah, Mr. Taylor, we're waiting for Mr. Taylor to certify. I certify that only those things that we went into closed session were discussed. No, I think Alan went on his own. He was like, I'm ready to go. Get on there. Sorry, Mr. Sylvester. I hear him now. Way to go, Alan.
Sorry, Joe, I thought we were through. I forget.
As previously stated, Mr. Taylor, do you certify that only those things we went into closed meeting were discussed?
I do certify, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Meeting